Okay, going back where we left off a while ago, the last thing we were talking about were medical issues on Shabbos, what you can walk out with, what you can't walk out with. So the last thing we were talking about a while ago was wheelchairs. Okay, we're talking about now about the manual wheelchairs that you can wheel yourself, or somebody else is allowed to push it for you. Well, if somebody else is allowed to push it for you. So last time, as an introduction to this, we learned like this, that if somebody, let's say, has crutches or a cane, and in the house they walk around with the crutches or the cane, so then in the street they're allowed to walk around with the crutches and the cane. If they don't, why? Because that becomes their foot. What happens if they walk around the house without a cane, without the crutches? Then it's very questionable on Shabbos if you're allowed to walk outside with the cane or with the crutches. What happens if somebody always uses a wheelchair even in the house? So now the question is that similar to a cane and crutches, or is it different? So some poskim hold no difference. Okay, this is like your feet, and therefore you're wheeling your feet, so to speak. Other people say it's really different than a cane and crutches, because a cane and crutches actually becomes your foot. That's what you're putting pressure on. That's like your foot. But a wheelchair, you're basically sitting there and you're moving it. It's not necessarily your foot. So there's a whole argument. Many people are lenient if somebody needs to, that they can use a wheelchair by themselves. But now the question is, let's say in a situation where there's no Erev, can a guy wheel the wheelchair for a Jew on Shabbos? It's not so simple. So the concept is like this. Let me explain it because it's coming up soon about carrying children on Shabbos. There's a rule in the Gemara that's called Hachai Neisei Esatzmei. A living person carries himself to a certain extent. We know there's what's called dead weight. Dead weight is carrying a dead person. A dead person that weighs 150 pounds is much heavier than a living person that weighs 150 pounds. Why? And even animals, by the way. The din is, Hachai Neisi Esatzmei. A person who is able to walk, an animal that is able to walk, and you carry it, so really it's like two people doing it, because the person carries himself, the animal carries himself, the person carries himself, and you're also helping. It's like we learned before, like two people doing a malacha. What happens if a little baby that can't walk yet, let's say they're 5 months old, they can't walk yet, so then it's a regular din of carrying on Shabbos. Okay? Even though that's only in a situation where the animal or the child is able to walk. Nevertheless, it's still rabbinically forbidden. It's still rabbinically forbidden to carry a person on Shabbos. Now, what happens if I ask a guy to carry somebody for me on Shabbos that's able to carry themselves? So then it's what's called shvus de shvus. It's a double rabbinic. Number one, carrying a person who can carry themselves, or an animal that can carry themselves, is only rabbinic, because you're not doing it all by yourself. The person's also helping you carry them. Plus, you're asking a non-Jew to do it. So the din is shvus de shvus, meaning a rabbinic of a rabbinic. Here, carrying would be rabbinic. You're asking a guy, which is also rabbinic, to do something rabbinic, so it's a double rabbinic. It's called in halacha shvus de shvus, rabbinic of a rabbinic. The din is shvus de shvus is allowed b'mokei mitzvah. In a place of a mitzvah, in the case of a mitzvah, you're allowed to have shvus de shvus is allowed. If it's not b'mokei mitzvah, you're not allowed to do it. Okay? So now the question is like this. Let's say you have a kid under bar mitzvah. Okay, there's a lot of discussion about all these things, but bottom line, is it a mitzvah for a kid under bar mitzvah to be in Shul Shabbos? No, there's no mitzvah for a kid under bar mitzvah to be in Shul Shabbos. He's not obligated in davening with a minyan. He's not obligated to listen to Kriyas HaTorah. So therefore, there's no mitzvah for him to be in Shul. But that's therefore, technically, for a guy to wheel a stroller on Shabbos in a place where there's no Eidiv, is a problem because there's no mitzvah for the baby to be in Shul. What happens if it's a man that needs to go to Shul to daven with a minyan and listen to Kriyas HaTorah and so on? So then, halachically, even if there's no Eidiv, you're allowed to ask a guy to carry a baby, not a baby, a person by, let's say, wheeling the adult in a wheelchair to Shul, because it's Shvus. The Shvus b'makim mitzvah. Now, what?
That if you get 9 people to come to his house and they can make him an offering?
Why should he bother 9 people?
Let's say.
Why should he bother 9 people to come to his house?
Let's say it's in the neighborhood, they could easily make a house minyan,
Why should he be involved a minyan in a shul?
No, the minyan shul still happen.
No, you don't have to do that. So now, but if it's but what happens, let's say, if somebody wants to be wheeled for a social visit? The man doesn't want to go to shul. He wants to be wheeled by a guy for a social visit. That's not a mitzvah. So, yeah, but shvus to shvus is only allowed b'mokim mitzvah. Socializing is not a mitzvah. What?
So I was going to say, the ma'at ayin on this, that was referred to you, having somebody wheel a non-Jew.
Yeah, but people see that he's going to shul. So that's not Marasayin. The only question is, if you're not going to shul. Now you have a very interesting scenario that happens a lot. I'll tell you where this applies, let's say, shluchim. Okay, they're out in who knows where. And they have little babies. And the wife feels it's important for her to go to shul because then she could talk to the women, socialize with them, but being mekad of them to Yiddishkeit. So now the question is that called a mitzvah that you'd be allowed to ask a guy to take a baby in a stroller, even if there's no Rishus Harabim, by the way? Because if a baby can't walk, and there's a Rishus Harabim, then it might be biblically forbidden, because then your mom is carrying it. That's not Shvus to Shvus anymore. Even in a situation, a small shtetl, where there's no biblical Rishus Harabim like William, because you don't have 600,000 people. So now the question is that called a mitzvah for a woman to be in shul? She's not obligated to daven with a minyan. She's not obligated to Kriyas HaTorah. Is that called a mitzvah that she wants to socialize with people? That's a very big question. Many of Arabanim say no. It's not called a mitzvah. But I'll tell you where you do have an interesting scenario. What happens if you have a Friday night dinner? You have a Friday night dinner. And the baby is there before Shabbos. You come before Shabbos. Comes at night, 10 o'clock at night, you finish the dinner. The baby needs to go home. The baby's not shaykh to walk home because it's late, or the kid's too tired, or falls asleep in the stroller. Okay? So now the question is, can you have a guy take that baby home Friday night? And then the din would be, you would be allowed to. Why would you be allowed to? Because a child, a kid, especially a little kid, has a din of a chayla, has a din of a sick person. For a sick person, a guy is allowed to do malacha for you on Shabbos, even a biblical malacha. Okay? A guy is allowed to do biblical malacha for a Jew on Shabbos, if he's sick. So now, a baby halachically has a din of a chayla. Now, the baby needs to sleep in his bed. Otherwise, they're not going to sleep. Babies need their own crib with their own whatever. They need to. So then you would be allowed to ask the guy to bring the baby home.
Even if he drives?
That's a separate issue. That might be a Marasayan issue. Let's talk about the walking aspect. So then, halacha is you would be allowed to take the kid home because then he has a din of a chayla. But to bring him to shul, there's seemingly no. They say. I'll tell you what they say. So they say the mother says, but I can't go to shul if I need a babysitter. So the answer is get a babysitter in your house. It's not a mitzvah for the baby. You want to be in shul, that's your problem. But you're carrying the baby. Who are you doing the malacha with? The baby. It's not a mitzvah for the baby to be in shul, that's for sure. As cute as they are, it's still not a mitzvah for the baby to be in shul.
Baby is nice as something cook?
No.
Still not.
Still is sasim with Rabbani, even in the Carmelist Alter Rebbe. What?
So does a baby need its mother? Let's say the mother says, I'm going to shul, and she goes to shul. Can you have a guy bring the child to the mother in shul? Because he wants the mother. The child wants to be with the mother.
If the kid is screaming,
only if he's screaming?
Yeah.
Why?
Or the kid must be nursed by the mother.
So I'm saying
But they don't nurse every 10 minutes. They should nurse before they leave and then come back and nurse. Or leave earlier. It's
Can you use that as a...
if the baby let's say the baby wakes up with a babysitter and it's tantrum time, then you probably would be allowed to bring the kid to the mother for the mother to calm him down.
Would the mother leave before it becomes tantrum time? Right before?
No.
In order
No, come on. It's here you're talking about you're coming before Shabbos. Now the kid needs to go home. You're allowed to have a guy. Take the kid home. What? Moshe.
But the Rebbe says is make care of people when she goes to shul.
Is that a mitzvah?
You take care of people, the Yiddish.
Yeah, but I understand. So she can go to shul. Does that mean the baby can be carried to shul?
That's who's the mother mitzvah.
What's the mitzvah for the baby to be in shul?
Mother.
Get a babysitter in the house.
But if
Can't
it's
hire.
not possible.
Huh?
You can't hire a babysitter right then and there.
So you planned it before.
Okay, so you
Okay,
can.
but if you
But you didn't, you can't. I didn't do it so I could turn on the light because I forgot to turn on the light. I mean, come on, you can't. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like
The Jew
that.
that drives on Shabbat can carry the baby.
What?
The Jew that drives on Shabbat anyway. Can that person carry the baby that is restless? That needs
Because he sins once, you can have him sin again?
I'm just asking.
No. What?
Same scenario with the child who came in at Friday night.
Yeah.
If the adult is chole, and he comes in Friday before Shabbat, and he's a guest somewhere, but he's chole.
dog,
A dog.
Let me tell you let me tell you we have a scenario for this, okay? This happens more often than you think about, by the way. It happens very often. It usually, Murphy's Law. You know how many kids end up in emergency rooms right before Shabbos?
Yeah.
I get this call every week. Okay? The kid's in an emergency room right before Shabbos. Now, even if the kid's let home, like they need stitches or whatever it is, they're going to let the kid home, yeah? It's a 4 mile walk. The kid can't walk Friday night. So what's the din? So then, again, because the kid's chayla, and the kid needs the mother, and the mother's not driving, a guy is going to drive her back. All she's doing is adding fuel, so to speak, but that's indirect. It's rabbinic. It's not biblical. It's indirect. So then the mother and the baby would be allowed to go home.
What about
Or 1 second, or another scenario. Happens also. A woman has a baby Friday morning, and they want to let her go home Shabbos morning. You don't say she has to spend 24 hours in the hospital. So now she wants to go on Friday, Shabbos morning, but she can't walk. She just had a baby, and it's fine. So halachically, she can go home with her guy. Uber, taxi, whatever. Now the question is, can the husband go with her? So I saw, I don't know, I don't get it, but there's certain Rabbanim I heard say that you could, the husband could go with her on Shabbos. I don't understand why. Yom Tov, I understand that you're allowed to.
I know why.
Because Yom Tov, you're only adding fuel. Yom Tov, you're allowed to add fuel. Sitting in a car on Yom Tov, if you're not driving, you're really not, besides Marasayim, you're really not doing anything wrong.
you lessen her anxiety.
All I'm doing is adding fuel. Yom Tov, you can add fuel to a fire. You can't make a fire, but you're not making a fire, you're just adding. But Shabbos, you're not allowed to add fuel to the fire. So again, ideally the husband should not go home in the car, he should walk. Or
He saw the bill and he became choleh.
then she'd be in the hospital.
Right. So the adult that is choleh can...
Yeah, but you can't plan to be, okay, I'm sick, so therefore I'm going to go to shul to eat, and then I'm going to have a guy take me home. Come on, I mean, that's like, that's cheating the system. We're talking all of this without a native. I'm not talking about Erev. If there's a native, it's a whole different story.
Someone who doesn't hold by the Erev, can the goy put this roll into Shulat Shabbos?
There are many Rabbanim that hold, if there's an Erev in the city, even though you don't go by it, the guy could take the kid. There are a lot of opinions like this. Does everybody agree with that? Not necessarily. Then, one second, there's one more thing. If I don't go by the Erev, can I ask somebody who does go by the Erev to carry for me? So many Rabbanim hold you could, some Rabbanim say it's not right, whatever. Okay.